It's the weekly wrap with your host, broadcasting legend Bruce Wolf, and his trusty sidekick, comedian Tim Slagle. And now, without further ado, Bruce Wolf.
Bruce Wolf, Tim Slagle on the weekly wrap. And Tim, it's kind of easy this week to figure out where you are right now. You're obviously, for those of you who are watching this, if you're watching this, you may see that I look frozen, and that's not any kind of glitch in the production. It's just that it's 0 degrees
because of the
here.
Arctic temperatures.
Yeah, I can't move.
Experiencing.
I'm actually frozen. You, on the other hand, are in Punxsutawney right now, right in front of. Unless you may be in a porno movie right now, because the place is called Gobbler's Knob, I believe. So, yeah. My only problem. Did you like the movie Groundhog Day?
I have never seen it.
Wait, everybody's seen it over and over and over again because it's about the guy living his life over and over and over again, and you haven't seen it at all.
I have never.
Is there a reason for that? Isn't there a reason for that?
Just never got around to it. When it first came out, somebody said that it was horrible, so I never bothered to go see it while it was in the theaters, and I had no idea that it was going to become as iconic as it has.
Oh, it's like one of the best movies ever, supposedly. And it's funny. I mean, I don't want to drop names so much, but I actually knew Harold Ramis a little bit. Played golf with his father, and I interviewed him on TV, and he was just the nicest guy in the world. But I did have a criticism of the movie, which you're not going to be able to counter. Thank goodness. You'll have plenty to counter in this, but. Bill Murray is the protagonist, and it's all about his development and his personal growth. But Addie McDowell is the female in this one, and of course she's a cardboard character. There's absolutely nothing wrong with her. So it's like, that was the beginning of where women were starting to be portrayed as superheroes, you can never cast aspersions about them. And Addie McDowell was just she was just there,
perfect,
to be a prop for Bill Murray, who's the only real human being in this. But it's a great movie. It's a great movie. Just a slight flaw there. So
during the pandemic, I did have my alarm set to "I Got You, Babe." So
there you go.
I am familiar with that portion of the film, at least.
Right. So we are recording this on Groundhog Day, but. Of course, the big story the last week has been what happened in Memphis. And Chris, our producer, said that he might be rolling some footage of the beating in the background. And I got to confess, I haven't watched it. I've seen some stills of it. I still haven't seen the beating of George Floyd. As a matter of fact, I'm trying to work my way up to the Zapruder film. So I just don't like watching these things. I believe him. I believe what's happened here.
Sure.
But what's interesting, of course, about this is from the people who brought you that a woman can have a penis. We apparently are blaming this all on white supremacy. So I just love that take on it, even though it was all black officers against a black guy, and the police chief is black and the mayor is black, and it doesn't matter because the Marxist view of everything. It's all the system that created this anyway, and everybody's just a puppet of of dialectical materialism or whatever. I mean, it's so ludicrous and so tiresome now. But there it is. White supremacy was the cause of all this, Tim, and I know you agree, of course. So
I miss the good old days when evidence like this was held until the trial. I mean, how can you you're seeing the most violent portions because that's what gets people to tune in,
right?
So it's edited for that. And
wait a minute, are you actually trying to make a case for the defense right now? This is interesting to me.
No, I'm tired of trial by Facebook.
Oh, okay.
I mean, there's no reason. Number one, there's no reason why this should be a national news story. It's not it's a local news story. There's a problem with the local police, obviously.
Yeah. I agree with you on that. And it's interesting. I mean, remember we talked about that LA taser beating last week or so, and I said, had you heard about it? Because while it did make some ripples nationally, it wasn't it wasn't anything that caused any rioting nationally or even demonstrations. But excuse me, the among the things, I agree. I think it should be a local story. This shouldn't stir a discussion about so-called police reform. Right. Among the other absurd things is somebody tweeted, well, these cops were Israeli trained. So I mean, are you kidding?
Oh, great. So not only is it white supremacy, it's the Jews.
Of course, it's always the Jews. And but now I don't know how much truth there is to this, because you read various things, but apparently in order to get this special unit put together post haste, and they needed it because Memphis had nearly 350 murders in 2021, whereas New York City, which is 13 times larger, had about 480 murders. So Memphis is, basically the murder capital of the United States. So they maybe needed this elite outfit. What were they called? The Scorpions, or with a real tough name and all that. But they might have lowered standards in order to get it together pretty quickly, and in order to have diversity. And and I think they lost a lot of qualified officers who didn't want to get the vaccine. So I wanted to throw the vaccine in there. No, but it's just it's just ridiculous.
And the media is just stoking it. They're running it over and over. They're talking it over about it over and over. They've made it a national news story. And not only is it a national news story, it's a local Chicago news story. I mean, the Chicago News is led with this almost every night. That's like their number one item is Memphis, more disturbing video revealed of the Memphis beating. And I almost think what happened was after they ran that Rodney King beating over and over, and they got all those riots, the media goes, "Hey, this is pretty cool."
Yeah, I don't believe in the conscious conspiracy of the media to do this. Like you had a program director saying, "Okay, let's do this so we get riots so that we can cover them, so that we can get ratings." But I do
why not?
But I do think that what they are trying to do is appeal to an audience, and who is left really to watch? I mean, other than you, Santa Claus, to watch. Who is left to watch the local news right now? It's a certain population that is going to be agitated by this, it's meantime we've got a mayoral. You talk about a local story. In the mayor's race in Chicago, and of course the primary being held this month, when it's cold out, which is by design. Talk about design. It's done in order to help the incumbents, although Lori Lightfoot may not be able to take advantage of that. But in the mayoral race, you had candidate Willie Wilson, who was criticized sharply because he has said this on more than one occasion, that the criminals should be hunted down like rabbits. Okay. And,
that is controversial because it's duck season.
Yeah, you're right about that. You crazy wabbit. No, you're right. You're right about that. He's Willie Wilson, always a little step out of the season with his comments. I was surprised at one of these debates that they didn't say, "Oh no, you're wrong. What we need is more midnight basketball." Just that would have been the equivalent on the other side of the argument. It's just
speaking of midnight basketball. There was an article I read. I wish I knew the author. I wish I knew where I read it. But the gist of the article is, what's wrong with midnight dishwashing? Is you put up a hoop for a kid so they can hang out on a basketball court and get in all sorts of trouble, that's okay. But if you have a kid washing dishes until midnight, the Labor Relations Board is going to come down on you so hard.
But that would be a good idea. Child labor. I think that would actually be, would teach a little discipline. There's nothing like washing dishes. Right. There was this did you ever hear of Florence King? She was a writer for National Review. She was a misanthrope. She was a brilliant writer. And she said, when she had writer's block, she started scrubbing floors because it was the good discipline action. And it's almost like, hey, if you don't start thinking right now, I'm going to make it wash floors.
This is the rest of your life.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
so meantime, on the west side of Chicago, and the south side, there is news that there was news the other day that a dozen more Kia and Hyundai thefts occurred on the west side, and apparently these are cars that are more susceptible to carjacking. And of course, everybody says, "Oh, this is terrible." Me, looking at the glasses 10% full, I say this is good news. It shows that people on the west side can afford Kias and Hyundais. I mean, I didn't know that.
Aren't Kias and Hyundais are the cheap cars?
But even that they can afford them on the west side, they can afford these cars. I mean, I thought they were all people taking public transportation or walking 5 miles. I didn't know that they can afford Hyundais and Kias, but yeah, apparently that those cars
are they being carjacked, or are they being
both, probably stolen, carjacked?
Well, because what I understand, one of the ways that they the cost cutting measured is other cars have a thing that the key has got a chip in it that the car recognizes. Well, Kia and Hyundai didn't do that.
Right.
So the old school way of just hammering a screwdriver into the ignition and turning it works, which they never show, by the way. They never show that on the TV. When it's somebody who's stealing a car, they never show how you actually steal a car. It's always wires under the dash.
Yeah. Now, can you still do that? Because otherwise, if you can't do that anymore, there's going to be a lot of chase scenes and movies that are going to go by the boards. It's going to be like if they had cell phones during Die Hard. That movie ends, of course, as somebody once says. If he has a cell phone, it's over. Anyway, this segment is over right now. Bruce Wolf, Tim Slagle on the Weekly Wrap.
I'm hoping Dr. Jill becomes a Surgeon General. His wife. Because Joe Biden's wife, because he would never do, but she's a hell of a doctor. She's an amazing doctor.
She's a doctor and PhD. Yeah,
I could be wrong.
I think she's a teacher, but might be good for Betsy DeVos's post.
Yes.
Bruce Wolf, Tim Slagle on the Weekly Wrap, and of course that's a clip from a while ago. And as a matter of fact, Whoopi Goldberg was so ashamed by that she retired, and I think they have a hologram of Barbara Walters in there now hosting the View. But actually, the clip's there because apparently this week, Dr. Jill Biden was in a suite with Roger Goodell, the football commissioner, and they referred to her as Dr. Biden during the playoff game. And of course, it's just ridiculous. There's been comments on this, for the last couple of years.
Why wouldn't she make a good Surgeon General?
Right? No,
think about it. You've got the Secretary of Transportation rides a bicycle
when he's not breastfeeding his kids, or whatever he did. Plus, Surgeon General is already crazy. Like a surgeon is in the military, he's a general. Come on. So you may as well call her Dr. Biden.
Well, I think that dates back to the beginning of the country when they actually had someone on hand in case the president needed to be bled.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because you have to have a general. You couldn't have a corporal put leeches on the president of the United States. You maybe you have a corporal take out his wooden teeth, but so yeah, calling her Dr. Jill. It's a doctorate of education, which is probably the least. I've got a Juris Doctor. And the only time I was called Dr. Wolf was in law school by a professor who did it derisively because I didn't know the answers to the questions.
What I have learned though, if you use Dr. Jill when you're writing a joke, it doesn't get pushed down in the Facebook feed.
Oh, really?
If you use Biden, not a lot of people see that joke. But if
I see
Dr. Jill
now,
or Dr. Jill's husband.
Yeah, Dr. Jill sounds a little too much like Dr. J. And, I would sue for trademark infringement if I were Julius Erving. But you were mentioning to us, I saw this quote earlier today. I didn't hear it, but did Biden pull another one What did he do? What did he do? I mean, he does it daily.
Biden said that the majority of women, or half the women in my administration are women. obviously the rest are Rachel Levine.
Yeah, there you go. And I think it's a hate crime against Rachel Levine.
And Sam
Biden
Britton
actually committed it. Biden had announced, was it yesterday, that the COVID emergency will end in a few months. Emergency, the federal government's wheels turn slowly. They can't just turn this puppy around. The emergency declarations will end on May 11th. And the reason for this is, he wants to take credit for ending COVID, but at the same time, they're still trying to figure out ways to spend all that money that they got to spend under the emergency powers. My question is, does this mean that people will finally, because I know people and I like them, but I still see them wearing masks when they come into a restaurant. When they sit down at the table with me, they'll take them off, but they got to have the masks when they're walking. Does this mean they're going to stop that because the president said the emergency was over?
Well, how could you? Isn't by definition an emergency something unpredictable? I mean, how can you say the emergency will be over on a specific date at a specific time? Yeah.
I'm not asking. Come on, we're not trying to make sense here. We're just trying to work our way through this.
I mean, if you're having a heart attack and the ambulance comes by, they say, well, this will be over within an hour.
Now, I think at one point Biden was actually truthful and he said it's going to be over when the Supreme Court says it is. So there you go. Meantime, this was interesting. Mark Halperin, who's this political wag, he was on the Commentary podcast, and he surprisingly, maybe not so surprisingly, said that he thought Trump has a really good shot at winning, and he's not a Trump fan by any stretch of the imagination. He will he's going to be the nominee, the Republican Party, and he's got a good chance of winning the general election. And some of the points he made were, one is Halperin thinks DeSantis is weak. Another is that Trump has a good campaign team, whereas last time it was Corey Lewandowski and a wing and a prayer, I guess. The Democrats are weak. And anytime the media go after Trump, it just helps energize the 47% of the population that will wind up voting for him. He thinks that Trump is the second best presidential candidate he ever covered, the first one being Clinton, just for having a feel for the people, understanding the mood of the country. And also that Trump, I mean, he's got this scar tissue from, all the time that he was president, and he knows what to do. On the other hand, I see him talking about Coco Chow and whatever, and it's like doesn't sound like a guy who really is serious about running for president. But how
it worked last time.
Yeah, well, what do I know? I mean, he could navigate his way to the presidency again. It seems like he has lost, like 3 in a row. He lost in 2016, of course. 2020, of course, you don't believe that. And then there were the midterms in the midterms 2022. But, that could be like an Obama phenomenon where Obama was very good for himself, but he didn't really have any coattails, and Trump might not either. So he could still. All I'm telling you is, you may get your dream come true here. That like Grover Cleveland, we have another a split presidency like that. And I believe Grover Cleveland's wife for the late 19th century was really hot. And Melania has got to be just about the hottest first lady. Although I think Don Lemon said the other day that he thought Michelle Obama was more attractive than Melania Trump. But, to each his or her own on that one. But there you go. You might have a Trump presidency.
Well, here's the thing that a lot of people I haven't really heard yet is that I believe that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez will be old enough in 2024.
She'll be 35 years old.
Yep.
She'll be able to run for president.
Yeah.
I did actually see a clip of her, and I know it's got to be sexist because but she looked like an hysteric on the floor. She was defending Ilhan Omar and, saying this is all about, her women of color and everything, keeping her off committees. But right. Who is going to be the Democratic nominee? Speaking of which, guess where their convention may very well be? They're talking about Georgia.
Yeah.
Well, they forced the Major League All-Star game to move from Atlanta to Denver because, Jim Crow 2.0. Meanwhile, there was a poll recently that showed, what percent of black voters thought that they were intimidated in any way whatsoever during the midterms in Georgia? You know what the percentage was? Zero. It was zero. I mean, usually you can at least Rod Blagojevich had 7% popularity at the end. It's hard to get down to zero, but it was zero. So so there's so much for. You talk about the people, the boys who cried Bruce Wolf, Jim Crow 2.0, and there's not.
Well, that's probably because they're intimidated to answer the poll.
Exactly. Totally. There you go. And while we have you there at Gobbler's Knob, how many more? Since you do know everything, how many more weeks of winter are we talking about? Tim,
well, technically, I think technically we got the solstice, but usually
I went emotional.
March 6th is usually meteorological spring, so we probably only have
really.
And especially it's been, we're already past midwinter.
Yeah, for a guy who talks about meteorological spring being March 6th, and you mentioned solstice, it's an equinox, buddy. Okay.
Yep, you're right.
Yeah. Don't question me because I've seen Groundhog Day, like 14 times. I know what I'm talking about.
I'm afraid of my shadow, so.
Me too. So the latest with Hunter is that this is a great tactic. First, they denied that and they're still denying it. I think it's called pleading in the alternative. They're denying that it was his laptop. But in the event it was, they're trying to sue Rudy and Steve Bannon and everybody for disclosing the contents and the owner of the shop. I forgot his name, the Wilmington shop. So, they were going to sue them and then say, you disclosed Hunter's laptop without his permission. And then everyone said, everyone said, is that you're admitting that's his laptop? No. It's I think this is analogous. That old thing I saw it in Annie Hall. Woody Allen was talking about the old joke about the people who are complaining about the food in the Catskills being so horrible. It's so horrible. And they give you such small portions. So, decide what you want. And it reminds me, and all these liberals, do you remember the Pentagon Papers? Daniel Ellsberg, liberates the Pentagon Papers. New York Times publishes it. Whatever happened to freedom of speech? We want to publish these things. It was bad enough that you had social media black out the New York Post when it mattered, and they knew about this laptop for a long time. Hunter knew it was his laptop, but they managed to keep it under wraps.
Those 50 intelligence experts.
They never said it was Russian disinformation. They said it looked like Russian disinformation. That's what they said.
I think Jim Jordan should be preparing 50 subpoenas right now.
I would love it. All 50 of those guys. Yeah,
whose idea was it?
Yeah, Bruce Wolf, Tim Slagle on the weekly wrap.
Please unlock the door. Why is the door so stuck? Please unlock the door. Please unlock the door.
Bruce Wolf, Tim Slagle on the weekly wrap. So, you've seen all of the clip, and of course, I mentioned before, I haven't even seen the Zapruder film yet, so I'm a little bit behind things. But first off, I actually read because I get my opinions by just reading other people, so then they form my opinions. Like I used to read Ebert to determine whether I should like a movie or not, and then I'd go in and I'd laugh during the movie at certain parts because, oh yes, Roger, even say this out loud in the theater. Oh yes, Ebert liked this part. Notice the lighting in the in the building in Citizen Kane right here. Yeah, it's foreshadowing. Anyway, I read an article, an essay in Forbes, knocking this whole Project Veritas video, which is really neat to be looking at right now. But from this Jordan Tristan Walker, the article in Forbes even challenged whether Walker really works for Pfizer. Okay. And I thought the guy who wrote the article was being clever by, too much or a half, whatever that old phrase was, because that's easily verified, right? So
Sure.
The guy was the guy was challenging that, and he was also saying, well, the best theory is still that it went from bats to humans, which I think there's a lot of currency to the Wuhan lab theory as well. So
sure. It's funny. At one point during the scuffle, he goes, "I feel threatened."
Well, here's the thing. I'm not so. I mean, what Pfizer denied that they're doing gain of function research or that they're trying to implement that. The guy was drunk at the time, and of course they could talk about things. Why he's disclosing all this to O'Keefe.
Well, he said apparently he was on a date and he was trying to impress the girl because that's a sure way to sweet talk a girl into your getting into her apartment and say, I work on gain of function research.
Well, I got to admit it is pretty good, but on the other hand, you are supposed to keep secrets when you're working for a corporation. But even if that's true, assuming arguendo, it's true that they're thinking about gaining a function research. I mean, our guys should be thinking about that, about working on that. You've got to. It's something that's got to be done very carefully. I would imagine.
Well, here's the thing. Okay, is that every year we get a new flu virus vaccine,
right?
And they say that they think this is going to be the flu that is most prevalent this season. Well, it seems to me they have to mutate that virus from last year in order to get next year's model. So I don't know that, in Pfizer's defense, I don't think what they're doing is that unusual.
Well, wait, you think Pfizer is creating a flu so that we have to inoculate ourselves against it?
No. They I think that they're mutating these viruses.
Oh, in order to fight it.
In order to fight it. They're trying to think what's going to happen to the virus between this year and next year. So I think they purposely do mutate viruses in a controlled environment. I don't know. I don't think they're released. They
right.
Oh, here this one will evade last year's vaccine. This will sell a lot.
No, it's like it's like a good football coach making halftime adjustments. They're trying to fight the next half. Now, you did say that you saw that there's even more that's been revealed because there's a little drip coming from O'Keefe on this, and the last part is very interesting.
Andrew Breitbart taught him how to do that. A little nod to Breitbart. Breitbart was the one that says that's the way you do it. Is what you do is you put a little bit out there and let the media try to cover it up, and then you give them a little more to show that the media was wrong.
Okay, so what's the latest?
The latest.
May as well go with this. What's
sure. The latest is that Pfizer's aware that the vaccine affects women's menstrual cycles.
Even more so than having a boss who is a woman will affect the rest of the females in the company. Is it more or less that so the vaccine will affect the menstrual cycle? And has it been for the good or for the bad? I mean,
it's for the bad. I think there were a lot of pregnancy tests bought once the vaccine started going out because they're going, uh-oh. A lot of women were going, uh-oh, I have not had my aunt show up for over a month.
I see. Okay,
and I
so
was
it's
getting a little friendly after that party.
I see. Okay, and that you talk about the guy trying to impress his girlfriend. That would have been the bit of information.
Oh yeah,
you wanna
because
give to
there's
her.
nothing women like to talk more about with a guy
Right.
than their periods.
It's that's guaranteed to get you in her apartment.
I told my nephew that. I said, occasionally women will get angry, and it's because it's that time of the month, and it shows that you're a sensitive guy if you remind them that.
So
because I'm a jerk.
So when I worked at Channel 32, it shows how much little you can actually talk about this, and I'd like this entire segment deleted, please, Chris. But it shows how little you can talk about it. When I was at Channel 32, we had, Rich Kaz Svengoolie. Okay, he actually was for a short time a part-time weather forecaster for us, and he was a comedic one, like in the spirit of David Letterman, who didn't really want to be a weather forecaster, but actually was one in Indianapolis, I believe. So Rich did it for us, and that the weather forecasters, they used to show this. They had that red seal that said AMS, American Meteorological Society, AMS. Rich actually had the seal on the weather board, and it said PMS on it. And and you know what? The news director thought it was the funny. Svengoolie, blah. Yeah, the news director thought it was funny as hell. Now, can you imagine somebody doing that kind of joke 35 years later? I don't think so. The world has changed, and I might say for the better. So pivoting very quickly here, while we're still able to do this. Did you see Steph Curry? You know who he is? He's this star basketball player for the Golden State Warriors. He apparently has a $30 million mansion.
Sure.
And guess what? He doesn't want low-income housing near it. But that's the ultimate NIMBY, not in my backyard. But, here's the thing, Steph, if you have a $30 million mansion, can't you just build a moat around it with alligators in it so that you make sure the surplus population doesn't get near you?
Is Steph biracial?
That's a good question.
Because that might explain his elitism. Maybe it's the privilege taking over the basketball.
There you go. There's a battle within his soul right now over that. And speaking of, there goes the neighborhood. Woodlawn on the south side of Chicago, not Steph Curry territory. They wanted to move 250 migrants, as they're now called, migrants to that neighborhood to house them there. And the people of Woodlawn have objected to that. And why should they be the ones to get the migrants? I guess they're using an old Chicago Public High School. They might be using one old Chicago Public School, which they're not good for learning, ciphering it or anything like that. So may as well put the migrants in there. But why not? I still think they should be put in Winnetka and Wilmette, and so therefore the television station dedicated to Winnetka talking to Wilmette, WTTW, could talk about it all the time. Hey, we've got migrants in our area, and lots of them, but they don't like that.
It's wintertime, so there's vacation properties all over. All over. That's why I thought Martha's Vineyard was perfect. All the unused property.
Sure, especially in the winter.
Yeah.
And the Chicago Public Schools, of course, are notorious for being
there's a
unused.
place in Rehoboth Beach, I think, where you could probably house about a dozen.
Is that Wilmington, Delaware? Are you talking about?
That's the president's
right.
Summer home that he visited last week.
Well, they could have the migrants, search for documents there.
Well, they did. The FBI did. There weren't any.
No. But I was, just hire some migrants to do some of the work for $15 an hour, and they can help find.
Rather than $1,000 an hour attorney makes more sense.
Now that's the one where they basically said we're coming. You may want to get rid of all these documents.
He was there. He was there last week because January is the best time to visit the beach in Delaware.
Hey, he doesn't really know where he is anyway. So, and then finally, for this segment, I read this somewhere that women apparently are uncomfortable going to the gym because they wear these tight outfits and men look at them. And, some people have said, well, if you're uncomfortable about that, just get your own gyms. But the thing is that, this is along the lines of something else. And we're going off the air anyway because of the PMS comments. So may as well go for broke right here. I mean, yeah, women don't want you to look at them when they're in those tight outfits and working out. But don't they kind of get upset if you don't look at them too? I mean, isn't it like both ways? Yeah. Am I wrong about that?
Why do you need the tight outfits? Why can't you? What happened to good old fashioned sweatpants?
They like to see their muscles as they're developing. It's an immediate feedback. I totally understand that.
Okay.
But yeah,
they like to see
it's hard to
ripple
to please
of the muscle underneath the tight, moist fabric.
Look, I know that I can't wear that anymore. It's not suitable for my age. That's the only reason. All right, we'll be back with more tomfoolery. Bruce Wolf, Tim Slagle on the Weekly Wrap.
Bobby Hull's legacy is not without controversy. He was not only a dynamic player, but a dynamic personality as well. Longtime Chicago broadcaster George Offman alludes to Hull's actions off the ice. Obviously, the man had a lot of flaws. He was convicted of assaulting a police officer and accused of beating 2 wives. Then, there were comments he denied making to a Russian newspaper in 1998 that Hitler had, quote, some good ideas. I think you have to kind of hold it in 2 hands.
Weekly Wrap. Does Bobby Hull mean anything to you, Tim? You're a hockey fan at all in Detroit, or?
It's I remember the name Gordie Howe. That was
sure.
the name. That was the name that the guys that were into hockey. I wasn't allowed to play hockey because
well, it would wreck your figure skating routine.
Hey.
You weren't allowed to play hockey.
No, it was my smile. My mom didn't want my smile to be
of course, because
it's all the boys who played hockey. They all had false teeth.
It's de rigueur to get your teeth knocked out. Well, speaking of Gordie Howe, well, actually, Bobby Hull took number 9, not because of Gordie Howe, but because of Rocket Richard. But I know all this stuff because Bobby Hull was my favorite athlete ever. And you're talking about an award-winning sportscaster. So that's my favorite athlete ever, easily. Wow. And the reason is because, he hit, right when I was, a kid, when you're, sure. you love that. I would go with my father, not even to the games themselves, but to the Granada Theater or the Uptown Theater, because they, didn't put the Stanley Cup games on television. They were in closed circuit broadcasts, and you'd you'd sit in the movie theater, and 500 men, I think they were smoking in the theater.
Sure.
They'd stand for the national anthem, and it wasn't even necessarily in color, but you'd watch on this big screen, and you'd see Bobby Hull take the puck from behind the net and just skate up the ice and go by everybody and terrorize goalie Terry Sawchuk of the Detroit Red Wings. And those guys didn't even wear helmets or face masks in those days. And somebody told me that Bobby Hull's slap shot back then was clocked at 120 miles an hour. I mean, and that is in the 1960s too, which has got with inflation. That's like a 400 mile an hour slap shot right now. So he was my favorite ever. Now, Bobby was a little complicated, and here's I'll announce it right now. I think that is Terry Sawchuk in goal right now. He gets an assist from Stan Mikita right there. Boy, that's really old footage right there. But anyway, see, now I'm going to be riveted by the footage, and I won't even be able to talk about anything else.
No, it's young Bruce. You're young Bruce.
Oh, there we go. Here's Bobby Hull. Again. Bobby Hull coming across the blue line. Bobby Hull with a slap shot and a goal. Oh yeah,
man, knocked him over. Knocked the goalie over.
I don't know if that's Sawchuk, but in any event, look, I even knew at a young age that he had his problems. Okay, because this is really personal, but when I was about 16 or 17, my parents were going through a divorce, and my way of coping with things is sarcasm. And I came up with a little newspaper called The Daily Divorce with little items about what was going on in the divorce with my parents. And you think that's funny, Busty? I'm going to knock your teeth out. All right. So
no, it's adorable.
Right. It's adorable. In the center of I took a picture of Bobby Hull and put it in the center because I had good layout and graphic design chops back then too.
Sure.
And I had a picture of Bobby Hull, and I said, "Bobby Hull beats his wife. Can you beat that?" Now, so obviously I was dealing with this, and this is more than 50 years ago. He also, just to make sure I'm comprehensive on this, also said that Hitler had some good ideas. Not killing the Jews necessarily, but he had some good ideas.
The train's on time.
And he also, right, I think he also was a drunk as well. So, that's the trifecta of sinfulness. But I knew all this stuff. And, I came to terms with that in my life because I wasn't even going to let Bobby Hull take Bobby Hull away from me. He was too important. So, and
I want to know more about the Daily Divorce. Did you actually print copies and take it door to door and sell it to the neighbors?
Look, I'd like to tell you here. Would you like to know about my parents right now? Here.
No, I want to know about the newspaper.
No,
that's fascinating.
Yeah, well, no, that's what I meant. I would send it,
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I'm selling subscriptions to that. Anyway, it's not, you can still read it on microfiche somewhere at your local library. But anyway, so Bobby, he dies a couple of days ago. He was 84 years old, and NBC Sports Chicago, which is like the home station for the Blackhawks, and they're homers. Okay. They're not that tough on the team or whatever. I mean, when John McDonough bought off the Blackhawk tribe with $24 in merchandise from Hawk Quarters so that they could use the name Blackhawk and not get any blowback from it. You think they examined that? I doubt that. But they said, we're going to examine the complicated life of Bobby Hull. So don't give me the complications. Just give me, the guy just died right now. Don't give it to me. Anyway, there's this guy on Channel 9, Dean Richards. He's like their movie critic and theater critic and everything.
I'm familiar with Dean.
Right, you're familiar with Dean Richards, but you're not familiar with Bobby Hull. Okay, all right, yeah, fine. All right, so anyway,
when's he on? He's on Sunday. He's
on all the time. He contributes to their shows and everything. He's a very smart guy, very knowledgeable. Anyway, he tweeted about Bobby Hull that he got to know him later in life, and he was always a gentleman, very kind and everything. Well, apparently some people reacted and said, "Oh, Dean, you don't realize how bad a guy Bobby Hull was." So he deleted that tweet. Okay.
Wow.
And I didn't like that. So I wrote to Dean Richards and said, "No sympathy for him, for Bobby Hull being practically sold into hockey slavery at a young age. And how many times did you go to a Blackhawks game with your dad and thrill to a Bobby slapshot whizzing by Ed Jockerman?" I got no response on that from Dean, but just wanted to give him a little pushback in the other direction. And then we just showed this on the screen just now, apparently, because Chris, our producer, can't stand Dean Richards, that apparently Mel Gibson had a problem with Dean Richards, and he called Dean an a-hole on Channel 9. I don't even know the circumstances around that. What did Dean ask him?
It's because Mel's perceptive. That's why.
Well, I mean, Dean must have asked him a controversial question. And Mel is not, is used to, being involved in some controversy. I wish we had gotten somebody a little bit better than Mel to call Dean that. I mean, I'm not asking for, the current Pope, maybe, the former Pope, Benedict, somebody, with a little better, Mel's kind of a temperamental. It's almost like a credit to you if you're called an a-hole by Mel Gibson.
I found something out about Mel, and I'll respect him forever on this. Okay. Is Robert Downey Jr. was kind of he couldn't make any movies because he couldn't get insurance.
Oh, okay.
Is when there's a star vehicle after John Candy died in the middle of a film, they now have to insure the star before they begin the production. So in case the production stops.
Oh, okay.
And because of his proclivities, Robert Downey Jr. could no longer be insured.
Yeah.
And Mel Gibson went in and underwrote him, said, I will pay for if he dies halfway through, I will pay for the picture. Put the money in escrow, and Robert Downey Jr. would not have a career today if not for that. And I'll always respect Mel for that.
I'll tell you, if I hadn't used up all my generosity for anti-Semites and Bobby Hull, I would give it to Mel Gibson right now, but I don't have any left. Anyway, so there's this item, Bobby Hull. The goalies didn't have masks on. And he would take a slap shot. And there was this goalie on the Rangers, as I mentioned, Ed Jacquemin. You could see his hair turning gray as the puck whizzed by. It was unbelievable. He had to be your hero. Last week, I think I mentioned this. I had this joke on Twitter. Google had ended it, because they're cutting back. Apparently, they had ended like massages for employees, and I said, and it merited a laugh from you at the time, and no need to laugh at it now. But the line was, what was my line, Tim, regarding that?
I don't remember how the setup into it, but I knew the punch word was happy ending.
Yeah, it was an unhappy ending for them.
Yep.
Okay,
yep.
Thank you. So, guess who liked my tweet? None other than one of your fellow comedians, Jeff Cersaio. He liked it. Now, I actually have, and he's on that podcast with Adam Carolla. I think they even have 5 or 10 more listeners to their podcast than we do. That's how popular they are. But Jeff Cersaio, and I actually go back a little bit, because you see on this thing, it says he has this character called Chet Waterhouse. Well, you are familiar that I have a character called Chet Chit Chat.
Yeah. And
they both came around at the same time, and people were telling me for years, hey, Jeff Cersaio stole your bit. And it's Chet. And I think Waterhouse might be based on Brick House. He changed it to Waterhouse. And I had Chet Chit Chat was based on Chet Kopic and Chuck Swirsky. Huh. Well, I was worried about this, and I never even, how I don't even want to watch, any of these scenes, from the Memphis killing and the Zapruder film, whatever. I didn't even want to see him or see the act or listen to the bit, because I was afraid that it was going to be like plagiarism on his part, and that I'd have to challenge him, and I didn't want to fight. Well, I finally did actually listen to it just a couple of years ago, and it's nothing like my character. So I was relieved. Plus, Jeff was very nice. A few years ago, he said, we just came up with this independent, Chet is it's a good name. It's a fun name. And that's where the similarity ended. Plus they were both, funny, irreverent sportscasters. And Jeff, where were you when I debuted this on WXRT in 1982? No, I'm sure it's a fine bit. And the least you could do is have me on subbing for you with Adam Carolla one of these days. But anyway,
plug our podcast.
There you go. And then there was one other item. You see this woman who stole like about $1 million worth of chicken wings. She's from one of the southern suburbs, and she literally flew the coop with these chicken wings.
Well, she didn't even really steal them. She ordered them with the intention to
having one hell of a barbecue or something. No,
she's going to resell them.
Listen.
And do you know how she got caught? Did you hear this?
No, how did she get caught?
Because she ordered the regular chicken wings, not the boneless. And apparently CPS does not allow allows boneless wings in the school. So they're saying, wait a minute.
Boy.
If she had ordered boneless wings,
that's how they nabbed her.
She would have gotten away with it.
Nabbed her. Bruce Wolf, Tim Slagle on the Weekly Wrap.
And that's the Weekly Wrap on radio and television. Follow Bruce at Bruce Wolf Shy on Twitter and Tim at timslagle.com. The Weekly Wrap with Bruce Wolf, a CP Pods production.